Chapter 2: The Cost of Confusion. Confusion is often treated as something minor, a temporary inconvenience, a small gap that can be ignored or worked around. But this is not true. Confusion is not neutral. It carries weight. It produces consequences, and over time it becomes expensive. Where there is confusion, there is loss. This loss does not always appear immediately. It builds slowly. It shows up in subtle ways: missed opportunities, weakened trust, delayed progress. But its effect is real, and if left unaddressed, it compounds. To understand this, we must first recognize that confusion affects three critical areas: trust, opportunity, and influence. Trust is built on understanding. When people understand you, they begin to trust you. They know what you mean. They can follow your thinking. They feel confident in what you are saying. But when confusion is present, trust becomes fragile. If your message is unclear, people begin to question not necessarily your intention, but your reliability. They are unsure of what you truly stand for. They are uncertain about what you are offering, and uncertainty weakens trust. This applies in every context. In relationships, unclear communication creates misunderstanding and distance. In business, unclear messaging creates hesitation in decision making. In leadership, unclear direction creates confusion among those who are meant to follow. Trust cannot grow where clarity is absent. Opportunity follows clarity. People respond to what they understand. They engage with what is clear. They move toward what makes sense to them. But when something is unclear, it is often ignored. This is one of the most costly effects of confusion: lost opportunity. A person may have something valuable to offer, yet fail to communicate it in a way that others can grasp. As a result, the opportunity passes, not because the value was not there, but because it was not seen. In business, this is especially evident. A company may solve a real problem, yet struggle to attract attention, not because the solution is weak, but because the message does not clearly communicate its importance. The market does not reward what it does not understand. Influence depends on clarity. Influence is not simply about speaking, it is about being understood. It is about the ability to communicate in a way that moves people toward action, toward belief, toward change. When clarity is present, influence increases. People can follow your reasoning. They can connect with your message. They can respond. But when confusion is present, influence diminishes. Even if the content is strong, the impact is weak because people cannot act on what they do not understand. This is why many people speak, yet few are followed. The difference is not always knowledge, it is clarity. The consequences of confusion are not only practical, they are also spiritual. And scripture makes it clear that confusion is not aligned with the nature of God. It says, God is not the author of confusion. 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33. This means that where confusion dominates, something is out of alignment. In the communication of truth, this becomes critical. If the message is unclear, the listener cannot receive it fully. And if it is not received, it cannot produce transformation. Understanding is the pathway through which truth enters. This is why clarity matters deeply in evangelism. It is not enough to speak. It must be understood, because understanding is what enables belief, and belief is what leads to change. Confusion interrupts this process. In practical terms, Confusion creates friction. It slows things down. It introduces uncertainty. It requires people to work harder to understand what should have been made clear from the beginning. In organizations, this friction appears in different forms. Teams misinterpret direction. Departments operate with different assumptions. Decisions take longer than they should, and progress becomes uneven. What should move quickly begins to slow. This is the hidden cost. Time is lost, energy is wasted, resources are misapplied, and all of this stems from the lack of clarity. This is why clarity cannot be treated as something optional or secondary. It is not a cosmetic improvement. It is not something to be added after everything else is done. It is foundational. Clarity determines how effectively everything else functions. Without clarity, even good ideas struggle. With clarity, even simple ideas can gain traction. This leads to a principle that must be understood clearly. Clarity is not soft, it is costly. Or more accurately, the absence of clarity is costly. It costs you time because things take longer than they should. It costs you trust because people are unsure of what you mean. It costs you opportunity because people do not engage with what they do not understand. It costs you influence because your message does not move people. And over time, these costs accumulate. Many people respond to these challenges by increasing efforts. They do more, they say more, they create more. But if clarity is not addressed, the results do not improve in proportion to the efforts. Because effort cannot replace clarity. More noise does not solve confusion, it only increases it. The solution is not to say more, but to say it more clearly. This brings us to another necessary reflection. If confusion is costly, then clarity must be treated as an investment, not as an afterthought, not a refinement, but a priority. Because the return on clarity is significant. When clarity is present, trust strengthens, opportunities become visible, influence increases, movement becomes easier, things begin to align. Take a moment to consider your own context. Where is confusion creating friction in your life or work? Where are things taking longer than they should? Where are opportunities not being fully realized? And ask yourself a simple question. Is this a problem of effort or a problem of clarity? The cost of confusion is real, but it is not permanent. It can be reduced, it can be removed, but only when it is recognized and addressed. Clarity is not something that happens by accident. It is something that is pursued deliberately. And when it is, the cost begins to decrease. Because where clarity enters, confusion loses its hold.